Hi, hello, welcome to my YouTube channel and welcome to a 24-hour readathon. It is currently 9:15. We just had to clean, sweep, vacuum a little bit, but my partner and I are going to be doing a 24-hour readathon together. He is currently primarily reading Pet Sematary by Stephen King, and my current primary read is actually 1Q84 by Murakami, but in this video I think I'm going to tackle primarily and just sort of focus on Please Look After Mother and Jane Eyre, because these two are on my April TBR and it is the 25th of April. I've been so busy with 1Q84 and a few NetGalley audiobooks that I just haven't really had the time to tackle the other books in my TBR. I am actually getting the physical copy of, so I think I'll maybe binge read that right at the end of the month. So yes, let's get into it. So with Jane Eyre, I actually did start it last night. I read the first 2 chapters, so I'm not very far into it, but I was really tired when I was reading these first 2 chapters, so I think I'm actually going to start over and just make sure that I'm really focused on the actual book itself. But from what I did kind of consciously and like properly experience last night, I do think that I'm really going to love this. I have very high hopes. As for Pet Sematary, Mark is currently at chapter 26. He's been reading this for the last, I think, week to like a few days. I don't even know, but he finished Girl Dinner and picked up this one, and I think he'll probably be able to finish this, not necessarily today, but maybe tomorrow, because we are doing this 24-hour readathon over 3 days. I don't think I actually said that. We're going to try and do 8 hours for each day, so I need to get my timer ready and get this timer going, and then we're going to both listen to an audiobook while we make breakfast. We'll listen to an audiobook together. That will be Delta Codex. I'll put the picture of it over here. It's a NetGalley arc that I was given access to, and we've been listening to it together anytime we do tasks together, so there's that. We also plan on reading Brothers Grimm together, but I don't know if this will necessarily happen in this video, so don't lock in on this one too much. We might not get to it during this particular 24-hour readathon, but I'll definitely be trying to read this by the end of April, because it is in the April TBR that I made. Alrighty, so I'm sitting at 58 minutes into this 24-hour readathon, and I have read chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Jane Eyre, and my partner and I also listened to a good chunk of Delta Codex while we were making breakfast. Here's our breakfast that we had, and here's the synopsis of Delta Codex so that you can just look at that. It's actually really interesting so far. I think I might have a pretty good rating for it once it's done. I'm predicting maybe 4+ stars, because so far it's actually really intriguing. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about Jane Eyre. So as I said, I'm at chapter 4 now. I've just begun chapter 4, so I finished 1 to 3, and I just wanted to read these little notes that I took of what I was thinking, because I didn't want to forget anything. So in chapter 1, we meet Jane and we're introduced to her circumstances, and honestly, I feel really bad for her. She seems really lonely and essentially isolated. I really don't like John, and I expect myself to dislike him more and more as the novel continues to unfold. I really like Jane at the moment. I think I see a lot of strength and tenacity in her. She likes to read and she likes nature, and she seems to have a very good imagination, and I really do feel like she is going to be a very strong, tenacious character, and I really like that. So that's my thoughts during chapter 1. Now chapter 2, this is when Jane gets put into the Red Room. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, so beyond chapter 3 I won't be talking about anything that actually happens. I'll just give thoughts and feelings on what has happened. But anyway, so in chapter 2 they put her into this Red Room, and this is where I feel like what I was talking about in chapter 1 with how she seems to be isolated becomes physically real. She is quite literally isolated in chapter 2. Then chapter 3, I just took note that I really like Bessie. She feels like she's going to be some kind of mother figure of sorts to Jane, or at least that's how it seems to me so far. I obviously don't know her very well, and she's kind of just popped up for a second, but she's just giving me that mother figure vibe, so we'll see if I'm right as we go into the book further. And then I just took a note on the Red Room. I feel like this incident is really going to stick with Jane. I have a sneaking suspicion that further down the line in the book, this is either going to come back in some kind of way where she'll be remembering it, talking about it, or we're just going to see the repercussions of something like this happening to such a young person. I believe she's 10 at the very beginning of the book. They speak about her being 8, 9, or 10, so I think she's probably around there. I feel like she's probably 10. But yeah, those are my thoughts as of now, and I will keep you updated on whether or not I have any like other thoughts about this book, and I'll definitely let you know what my final rating for Delta Codex is if we finish it during these 24 hours. Okay, so I've got a quick update. I've been sitting outside and reading, and I've just propped you up on a bird feeder, so if you're swinging around a little bit, that's why. I just thought, well, this is my height, so I can stand in front of it. So my updates are, so for chapter 4, I took note of the fact that I can officially confirm she is in fact 10 years old. She does not like psalms, which to me is a sign that she doesn't really care whether something is popular or not, and she's okay with having her own opinions, because immediately after there is a reaction from someone else where they clearly state that this is a very popular verse and how dare you not like it, and she seems relatively unbothered. Then I made note of the fact that Mrs. Reed is Jane's benefactor, and I don't like her, and they seem to not like each other either, which is very obvious. And then I just wrote justice for Jane because I feel like she really deserves better. Chapter 5, she starts to go to this new school, and I've noticed that it seems to have pretty poor conditions, but she doesn't seem to mind, which really makes me think that when she was in this other place, the Reed's home, the family home, it must have been really, really bad, because you'd think she'd complain more about these poor circumstances. But anyway, and then she meets a friend, which is really nice and exciting. Her name is Helen Burns, and I feel like something really bad is going to happen. I took notes of that actually a little bit later, but as soon as I started to notice that they were really becoming friends, I started thinking, wow, I think something bad is going to happen to this character, which I will not confirm nor deny because I don't want to spoil anything, but I might have been right, I might have been wrong. Then for chapter 6, I took note of the fact that the classes began, and it seems that her new friend Helen handles punishments very different from the way that she does, and I think that she's going to learn something here and maybe take a lesson from her friend with that. But I could be wrong. I think maybe they'll both learn something from each other, but that depends on when the bad thing that I think is going to happen to this character will happen or doesn't happen, or whatever the case is. Like, if it happens really soon, then obviously she won't have the opportunity to learn from Jane, so that's gonna be pretty sad, I think. Then for chapter 7, I just wrote, Jane seems to simply talk about the poor conditions at Lowood, but still somehow seems mostly unbothered by it. So in this chapter, she does seem to talk about the poor conditions a lot more, but she still doesn't seem bothered, like I said. Anyway, and then I took notes of some themes that I was noticing, which was passion, class, and then religion and self-control, I feel like, because they really are kind of pushing the idea of Jane controlling her passions for things, and also I think tying to religion, just controlling your behavior a lot more and having a lot of self-control, I presume, or at least that's how it's coming across to me. And then I have a couple notes here. I said, I really hate Mr. Brocklehurst, I think is how you say his name. I'm not too sure, but I really hate him. He's a horrible person. Then I said that Miss Temple is quite nice. I like her. She seems like a lovely woman. And then this is where I took notes of the fact that I think something bad is going to happen to Helen. And those are all my little notes that I took while I was reading. I believe I'm at chapter 10 or 11 now. I'm not 100% sure. But I am really liking this book. It's very interesting and it is keeping me very intrigued. Update time. It is the following day. We are about 8 hours or so in. My hair is not working with me right now, but that's not the point. So still reading Jane Eyre. I've still been taking some notes, so I'll share that with you now, but I just wanted to take this moment to say we finished listening to the audiobook The Delta Codex by, I cannot remember the author's name right now. We both gave it 4.75 stars. I will put a image right here of the cover of the book, and then I'm going to put a little screenshot all over the screen of our reviews, and then you can just pause and read those. In terms of Jane Eyre, this is how far I am. I am on page 212, chapter 18, and I'm really loving it so far. I definitely think this is going to be a 4+ star read. Do I know exactly how far into the 4+s? No, but I just know that this is definitely going to be beyond a 4-star because it is so good so far. Time to share some of my notes with you. So I took a couple more notes. Chapter 11, I said things are going to be better here at Thornfield. I can feel it. So this is when Jane goes to Thornfield and starts working there. I don't believe that's much of a spoiler. I'm pretty sure it says something about that in the synopsis. Chapter 12, I said that this seems to span over a few months. I was just kind of taking note because I think that the chapter 12 seems to go span over the period of a couple months. The birds are really getting into it right now. And then, oh my gosh, now they're kids going crazy. Okay. Chapter 13, I just took note of the fact that this is when we're introduced to the character Mr. Rochester? Anywho. Then I took note of the three primary characters that we've just met here, which are Mr. Rochester, who is the owner of Thornfield and is Jane's employer. Then Adele Verens, this is Jane's pupil because she's a governess here. And then I took note of Mrs. Fairfax, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the housekeeper of Thornfield. That's what I took note of, so I'm assuming I must have heard that. Oh, by the way, I've been going back and forth between physically reading Jane Eyre and listening to the audiobook, just depending on what I need to do. And then over here in pink, I kind of put some arrows connecting them, and I feel like there might be a romance forming between Jane and Mr. Rochester, but I don't know. They literally just met. Well, I'm beyond the point where they just met, but at the time when I wrote this, they had literally just met, and I was just like, I feel like there must be some kind of romance here. Then I just took note of the locations that we had been at, because they're starting to feel relatively important, because we started Gateshead. This is the Reed's home, the Reed family home, and Jane is very unhappy. Then she goes to Lowood, which is the school, and she seems to grow a lot as a character here and start to become more happy. And then she goes to Thornfield, which is the Rochester guy's place, and she seems to really start to settle more into herself, and she seems to kind of gain this sense of independence, and I feel like she's a lot happier here. Then I just took note of the fact that they really like to mention fires a lot, and we just met a woman who I don't want to say the name of because I feel like what I'm about to say about this woman might be spoilers, but Jane seems to be quite unnerved by this character, and I feel like clearly the servants and people seem to be keeping some kind of secret, but I think that there's a mystery secret situation that very heavily involves this woman. That's my personal theory. I think that she's a really big deal and that there's some kind of big old scandal or something that pertains to this woman, but I'm not going to say her name because I think that might be spoilers. I don't know. Okay, so time to give you guys a little bit of an update. It is now the following day, so it's Monday, the 27th, and this should be either the last day or basically the last day, and we'll do 1 hour tomorrow. My hair's not working with me today. It's working with me less than it did yesterday, and I literally complained about it yesterday. But we started a audiobook called The Cafe of Infinite Doors. I can't remember the author right now. It's another audiobook on NetGalley. I think it's the last one that I have left that I need to listen to. Here's a picture of it. You're welcome. I'll put the synopsis here. There you go. Pause. Read whatever you want to. I don't really have any thoughts on it yet, so I'm not going to talk on that one. But I do have a Jane Eyre update. I am now, I believe, 60% of the way through. I'm on chapter 26. I'm about to start chapter 26. I've just finished chapter 25. And honestly, I don't think that there's much that I can say without being very spoilery. And okay, so because like I said, I feel like from this point on I can't say anything without it literally being a spoiler. So the only thing that I wrote down in my little notes was that from chapter 20 to 21 I feel like the tea begins to boil. That's the only thing I wrote down. And I think from here on out I'm probably not going to say anything. I'm not going to give you any updates on Jane Eyre until I am done and I can bring you my actual review and my star rating. And my reasoning for this is because, like I said, I just feel like there's nothing that I could say without really spoiling the story from here on out, because I feel like prior, a lot of the things that I was kind of like briefly mentioning or touching on did feel like I could mention them without just straight up spoiling the entire plot. Whereas now I feel like everything that's happening feels very obvious and just very like, this is a spoiler. If I say this, you have been spoiled. And I know that this is a classic, so there is kind of a little bit of a, if I spoil something for you, you've already done it to yourself, you've had years to read this. But at the same time, I'm only now reading this classic for the first time, so like, who am I to talk? Like, who am I to have that opinion? But yeah, I think if at any point I do want to discuss anything with spoilers, I will probably just put a note here that just says spoiler and then I will speak. But I don't really want to do that, so as much as possible I will avoid having to do that. But yeah, I guess this is my update. I don't have anything else that I want to say. I don't have any other thoughts. Ma, in case anyone is wondering, my partner, he is literally like roughly 100 pages away from the end of Pet Cemetery. He obviously also finished the Delta Codex. He has also now started the Cafe of Infinite Doors with me, and if we do finish that during this, I will pop up both of our ratings and our reviews for that. But yeah, he's really enjoying this so far. He hasn't said too much to me about this, but I think when he's done, I'm definitely gonna have him tell me everything he thinks about it, and I'll put a screenshot of his review up here for you guys to look at. And yeah, that is about it. Also, I just want to remind everyone, I loved Pet Cemetery. I gave this 5 stars, so I really hope that he walks away with a 4+ star rating for this, otherwise I'm gonna be really sad. I'm kidding. He has every right to dislike whatever he wants to, but I do think that this is the kind of book that he'll enjoy, so I have high hopes for him with Pet Cemetery, but we'll see what his final rating is at the end of this video. Okay, so I actually forgot to say something. I'm going to quickly just give you guys this thought over here. Something else that I wanted to say was that I can't specify because spoilers, but something pretty big has happened, and I think this is a pretty large part of the plot, and this does kind of feel like something, to me at least, it feels like something that would or should be happening at the end of the book. And there is around 200 pages left of this book for me. It's a 500-ish page book, and I'm I think on 325, something like that. So there's roughly 200 pages remaining, and I'm definitely wondering where the rest of this plot is going to be coming from, given that this very large thing has happened, and I'm assuming that some kind of bad thing needs to happen, and this is, to me, like the happy ending, yay kind of thing that should be happening at the end of the book. I'm saying the word happening so much right now. And yeah, I guess that's kind of just all I really wanted to say, but I completely forgot to put this in my initial update. So here's my dogs for you guys to look at. Here's their little faces. They're chilling in the guest room in the sun because it's very windy outside, so the poor little guys can't like sunbathe outside because the wind is too bad. Yeah, the wind is too bad. The wind is way too bad, little babies. Okay, I'm nearing the end of Jane Eyre. I feel listened to. I'm nearing the end of Jane Eyre. I'm 88% through. I'm on page 479, chapter 35, and I believe there are 38 chapters, so I have 3 chapters left. I'm not going to do the maths on how many pages I have left, but I don't have a lot of pages left. And as of right now, the only new thoughts that I've had, which honestly these are barely new, is just, wow, the audacity of men, especially back in these days. If anyone here has read Pride and Prejudice, the There's something that happens here that's going to have you thinking of the audacity of men in Pride and Prejudice, specifically one man, and there's a man here that has the same level of audacity in a very similar way, and I just needed to bring that up momentarily. I'm going to now go and finish this book and then I'll get back to you. In case anyone is wondering, we are 17 hours 42 minutes and however many seconds into this. It is currently Tuesday, the 28th of April. This has run a little bit longer than we expected it to, but we're planning on finishing up this 20-hour readathon as well as our books that we're reading, obviously, today. So we'll see you when one of us starts a new book, and by that I mean I will see you. If Mark starts a new book, I'll just tell you about it. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say, so I'm just gonna stop this update here. Okay, update time. I just finished reading Jane Eyre and I'm going to put a screenshot of my rating and review over here. There you go. I gave it 4.75 stars. I don't know what was preventing me from giving it a 5-star. I honestly can't explain that. It was just this feeling that I had of just, this is not quite a 5-star, and I do personally feel like 5 stars are more of a feeling than they are a logical choice. And on the note of 5 stars, here is my partner's 5-star review of Pet Sematary, and then here's my 5-star review of Pet Sematary, just because I think that it's interesting that we both gave it 5 stars. His review is so short, but it's such a perfect statement about that book. I wholeheartedly concur with his review of it. Like, chef's kiss, that's such a good review. Yeah, so Jane Eyre, needless to say, amazing read. I mean, it's a classic, of course it's good. I feel like it's bizarre to not expect good things from classics. Obviously there have been classics that I haven't loved as much or maybe haven't rated above a 4-star. Like, I've definitely had my fair share of not good experiences with classics, but I do tend to go into classics pretty optimistically because there's a reason that they're classics. I mean, clearly enough people felt good things and thought good things about these books for them to become classics. So I'm always optimistic going into them. But aside from this, I don't have any other updates for you. Hopefully we can both fit in another book. I don't know if we're going to be reading physical books or if we're just going to listen to the NetGalley audiobook and just finish that. I have no idea what the plan is in terms of what we'll read, but I will update you as soon as we've made any decisions. And yeah, I guess that's all for now. Okay, small update. I believe I already showed this, but I'm reading Brothers Grimm for the last little bit of this challenge. I just finished a manga, like, classic thing. I'll put an image of my review over here and an image of the cover over here for you to see. It was Anne of Green Gables, so there's that. I currently am at a point where I have about 15 minutes remaining in this little 24-hour readathon that my partner and I did. He is currently reading The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, and we listened to another chapter of The Cafe of Infinite Doors, I think is the title, and I am... ooh, wrong one. I'm actually at the next one. I'm at The Valiant Little Tailor, which is page 79. Okay, so this is actually so exciting. The 24 hours are officially done, as you just saw in the previous clip. I actually have not finished this book, obviously, because there wasn't much time there, but I did get about halfway through Hansel and Gretel, and I can tell you now that I believe that is going to be 5 out of 5. For me, I've been rating each short story individually, by the way, and my plan is that once I'm done, I will go and tally up the total and then divide it by how many short stories there were, and that's how I'm going to do my rating. That's generally how I tend to do short story collections, because I find that that's the most accurate way to represent how I felt about it as a whole, because unfortunately I do feel like I often have such different opinions about each short story. And then usually what I'll do is, if certain short stories really stuck out as particularly bad to a point where I feel like it affects my rating, I will then look at what the maths was, and if I feel the need to remove half a star or even a full star just to just to match how I actually feel about the book, I will sometimes do that, but generally the maths tends to work out pretty well. I have high hopes because so far most of my ratings have been pretty good. I think I've had 2 or 3 of the short stories be in the 3-star range, and the rest of them have been above that. So I am thoroughly enjoying this. I would highly recommend it as of now, and I will tell you about this book and give you my review for it eventually at some point, maybe in the next video. I have no idea yet. I don't even know what the next video will be. I don't know if I'll even have time to do another video soon. There might be a little bit of a break for a while, just in terms of vlogs, because this beginning of May is going to be so crazy, which is why I filmed this at the end of April. So that is the video. This is the end. Anyway, goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting. Let me know how you feel about this slightly different formatting and the more, I guess, thought out sections and more intentional reviews. I'm trying out something new, and I think this is probably how I will be formatting the vast majority of my vlogs going forward, just because I have been recently kind of going back and forth on what I like and what I don't like in my content, and I think that this might be it, but I don't know. Anyway, goodbye.